Hello and welcome to my channel where I do guides for photography and post-processing software. Today we are inside 3.8.0 of Darktable. The 3.8 version has just been released, so if you're still on an older version, you should absolutely update, as the update is really good and really strong. Anyway, today I'm actually trying to record this in a higher resolution, so that might actually be really nice if that works well. Anyway, we are trying to develop this image. We are going to use the Retouch module a bit today, and I'm going to show you how you set the source point and the difference between heal and clone. This will surely help you in the future when you're using Darktable if you have dust spots and stuff like that in your images. But first we are going to develop this as a normal develop. I'm going to take a snapshot right now. Next thing I'm going to do is to go and do the crop right away. I usually wait with the crop, but in this case I'm actually doing the crop right away. I do not want too much foreground in this image, so we are going to try and balance the crop for that, and I'm using 16:9 resolution because I'm not going to print this image. So if I use 16:9, it's better for online if I'm going to share this image online. I do not recommend 16:9 resolution if you're going to print the image. Then it's better using 4:3 or something like that. Alright, so yeah, that's the first initial edit. We are going to try and bring the image up without blowing the sky. So to start doing that, I'm going to add a new exposure instance, and I'm going up just a bit there. Let's go up to around here, I think. Yeah, that's fine. The next thing I'm going to do is to check if the white balance is okay. I think it's a bit too cold. This is a cold day. This is January in Norway, so usually there's snow and ice, but it's been kind of mild weather lately, so that's the reason why there's no snow. Anyway, let's just start and look at the color calibration to see the white balance. And I can see that it's at 4362 Kelvin. So I think that's actually pretty close to perfect. I think I just want it a bit warmer. And I think the software is going to have a hard time nailing the correct white balance here, but we can try if we use the droplet tool here. So yeah, it warms it up far too much. It's not looking totally crazy though, so we could use this, but I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to reset it, and I'll set the white balance manually instead. So I'm going up quite a bit on the temp. Oops, yeah, to maybe around there. I think that's fine. I'm going to go in and see if the sheep looks too hot, because I don't want the sheep to kind of glow yellowish orange. So I think maybe I'm going up to around there. Alright, so the next step is to go to the filmic RGB module, and I'm actually going to try the auto tune levels. I usually don't do that, but in this case I want to try it. So I think it's it's too bright in the sky, so I'm going to try and adjust the white relative exposure. Maybe bring down the highlights just a bit there. Yeah, to something like that. That's fine. Next thing I'm going to do is to go into the correct tab, and I'm going to activate denoise profile and the lens corrections, chromatic aberration, and haze removal. Hopefully haze removal brings down the highlights just a bit, and I think it did actually, so that's nice. Let's go into the color tab module, and then we are going for color balance RGB, and we are going up quite a bit on the global vibrance and also in the global chroma and the highlights. So now you can see that we definitely have a bit too warm image. So I'm actually going back to the color calibration, and I'm going down on the white balance. And this is typical. You go from one module to the other and back to the first and stuff like that. So that's something you have to do a lot in software like this. Okay, so I think maybe we should leave the global saturation alone, but I'm just gonna see how it looks if I go up a bit. And it doesn't look bad, but I'm thinking maybe I'm going down. And in the perceptual brilliance grading is where we can adjust the shadows, the midtones and the highlights, the luminosity or lights. So if I go down on the highlights, I bring down the highlights overall inside the image. So if we go for something like that, and maybe go up on the midtones and up on the shadows, something like this maybe. And I think that the white balance still is a bit off, so I'm going to reset it and go up just a bit to around there. So we actually brought down the white balance quite a lot there. And I think maybe should go down just a bit more. And what we could do is to try and do a gradient on the sky. Let's do that. So if we create a new instance of exposure and bring the exposure down quite a bit to maybe something like that. And then we can go into the drawn mask and do a gradient. So we find a gradient here, and I'm only going to add one gradient, so I don't need to hold down the control key. If I wanted to add more than one gradient, I could do that by holding down the control key. So I'm adding the gradient to around here. And as you can see, that brings down the exposure in the sky. If I go all the way down to around here, you can see it more clearly, but let's try and adjust it. I don't want to go down too much. We kind of want to have it a bit balanced in the image. Now, as you can see, we have a perfect straight line in the gradient, but if we want to, we can actually bend the gradient. And as far as I know, this is the only software where you can actually do that. I might be wrong about that, but it's Darktable is the only software where I have been able to do that. So if we go to the center here, the perfect center of this gradient, and use the scroll wheel, you can see if I scroll up, I'm bending it upwards. If I scroll down, I'm bending this gradient downwards. In this case, I just want to bend it just a bit upwards, and I'm going to angle the gradient to something like this. And as you can see, I have a pretty small feather. If I want the feather to be a bit bigger, I can go to the center again and hold down the shift key on my keyboard and actually scroll with my mouse wheel, and this will make the gradient or the feathering either smaller or tighter or bigger. In this case, I kind of want to have the feathering around there. I think that's fine. Now let's see without the exposure module. So the sky is pretty bright, and with the exposure module we are bringing down the sky, and I think that works quite good actually. I'm going back to this exposure module, and being that we have brought down the sky, the highlights in the sky, I'm actually going up quite a bit on the overall exposure bringing the foreground up a bit. And I think that's fine. And I'm going down a bit on the sky again. So this is a trick that you can do to balance the sky and the foreground. I think actually it's a bit too bright now. So maybe to something like that. I think that's fine. If it seems dark to you, my monitor is perfectly calibrated for sRGB. Maybe if it's too dark for you, you haven't calibrated your computer. Okay, so I think the sheep is a bit too yellow still. I would like to have them more white, so I think we actually need to go down again on that white balance. Yeah, I think to around here actually. That's a lot better. Alright, so we do have some dust spots in this image. I'm going to lower the exposure in the sky so you can clearly see the dust spots. So if I go to around here, you should be able to see them a bit better. No, actually you're not. So let's just go up to around here again. Either way, if you can't see them, you are going to be able to see what I'm doing. So if I go into the correct tab again, we have the retouch module. And do remember that I'm using the scene referred workflow on the presets here. So if you go to the hamburger menu, make sure that you have the scene referred workflow activated. And you should also have the scene referred workflow activated under processing in the preferences. Alright, so retouch. Now we have ways of calculating the how it should mask the spots that we are trying to remove. The algorithms. We have heal and clone. Those two are the two I use the most. For the sky, I like to use the heal. I think it works just a little bit better than the clone tool. And of course, I use circles on dust spots, so I use this one. Now to add more points to remove more than one spot, I do recommend that when you click the circle, you hold down the control key. So if I hover here, you can see add circle. Control plus click to add multiple circles. And that's what we are going to do in this case. So I hold down the control key and click on that circle. Now we need to set a source point for our spots or spot removal. So if I go up to one of those spots, let's do this one. I want to have the source where we are picking the luminosity and the colors from as close to these circles as I can get it. And if I go down here, you can see the feather on this circle is kind of wide. If I want to make the feather smaller or bigger, I hold down the shift key on my keyboard and I scroll with my mouse like this. And I think the feather is fine around here. So now I want to set the source point. To do that, I go to the area where I want to source from, and I hold down the shift key on my keyboard and I do one click like this. Now the source point is here. So if I go and click on this spot, it picks the source point from here. And as you can see, the source point follows my cursor now. So if I go to this spot, I have the source point around here. And if I don't need to change it, I simply click again, and I do the same for all of these spots. because I feel like I don't need to change it. So that's nice. We have a spot down here and we are going to try and remove that. And we have some more spots over here. So let's just remove those quickly here. And again, I don't think you can see all of those spots, but they are there, believe me. Okay, so we do have one spot here. So if I zoom in, you should be able to see that spot, hopefully. So this spot, and this spot is really close to this area. So if I don't pick a correct source point, we are going to source from the ground, and we don't want to do that. So I only going to add one circle here. So I'm going to click on the circle without holding down the control key on my keyboard. And as you can see, the feather might be too big. We might source from the ground. And as I said, I don't want to do that. So I am going to decrease the feather to maybe something like that. And I'm going to decrease the circle to maybe something around that. And let's set the source point over here maybe. And now we are going to try and remove this circle. And yeah, the software did a really excellent job. And we didn't pick up anything from the ground here. So the way to make sure that you're sourcing and not including stuff that you don't want to include, then you set the circle size to the correct size, to the closest of the spot you want to remove. So you don't have a cursor size that's a lot bigger than the spot. That makes no sense, right? And then you make the feather also a bit smaller. And I would recommend to try the healing tool. If you have no success with the healing tool, you can try the clone tool. So let's say this circle was didn't work, didn't do what we wanted. We can right click on this circle with the mouse, and that removes that point. So that's how you remove the points or what you've done, the circles that you've added. Simply right click on top of that circle to remove it. Do not try to hit delete on your keyboard, that won't work. Anyway, let's go to the clone tool and we can try again to add a source point and try to fix this circle. So let's say I want to source from over here. We make sure not to have the feather in the ground there. So let's do something like that. And let's see how that did. Yeah, now you can see we use the clone tool, and the clone tool is too accurate, and that made this area a bit brighter. So that's the reason why I like to use the heal tool on clouds or skies, I mean. So let's go to the heal tool again and let's add the circle. And we're just going to use the same source point like this. And now it should be perfect. Yeah, it's perfect. All right, so do we have any more steps to do? Maybe we should try and go up just a bit more on the shadows actually. Yeah, that's fine. And a bit more on the midtones. We can also go to the exposure here and just add some more brightness. Yeah, I think that's fine actually. And if we want to, we can add a vignette. So let's just do that and go down on the scale. If you've watched my videos, you know I like to add just a small vignetting on my images. I think it really makes the focus or focal point pop if you have a vignette. The fall off point is too little, the feathering, so we are increasing the feather a lot. And I don't like to desaturate in the vignette, so I'm actually going to go up again on the saturation. So let's see, this is without the vignette and this is with the vignette. And I think maybe we could actually raise the exposure just a bit more, but I think I'm going to leave it there and say that this image is done. We have done quite a few steps here. Let's do a snapshot. Let's just go in here and you can see the before and this is the after. So we've done quite a few things to this image and I kind of like it actually. I think it's a great conversion. We might have overdone the colors just a bit, but it's okay. I would maybe go down on the saturation just a bit there. So if we go down like this, I think that helps actually. Do something like this because it's not a hot day and the colors should be a bit muted. So yeah, that's fine. Let's go down just a bit more in the highlights. And yeah, that's it for this video. I hope that you got something out of the retouch module and that you know how to set a source point, how to delete failed spots, and when to use clone and when to use heal. If you have any questions about Darktable, please leave a comment. If you like this video, please hit that like button and maybe share it on some social sites. And if you want to watch more from me, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And I hope to see you again. And have a nice day. Goodbye.